People buying manga instead of comics. The transition from west to east. Is this happening? Well, it is. But what does it mean? And is the whole model going to flip from regular comics to manga? Well, let's examine that. Hey there, this is Perch. Thank you to a listener. That sounds weird to say it that way. It sounds like I'm a radio show, but thank you to the listener who brought up this idea and this topic, this question of you know the transition from west to east, as they say, from buying traditional U.S. comics to manga. Is it happening? Is this the evacuation of Western comics due to social agendas? Well, let's break it down. First off, this has happened before, and it's really important that we keep that in mind. This isn't a new phenomenon. This isn't a case of something is happening in this current year or the last 2 years that is causing this move. There have been waves or moments in the past, at least two that I can think of off the top of my head, where manga has attracted readers and people have gone over. By sales and by looking just firmly at the numbers, whether it's Comicron or other places, we're not seeing a migration from one to the other. What you are seeing is manga is raising in profile, and there's a couple titles in particular. The one that's I think driving a lot of attention right now, the My Hero Academia, which is not a new manga, but it's one that's not yet at its peak. And what I mean by that is a lot of people know it, but it hasn't hit mass adoption yet, and it's about to. It is on the upswing of people kind of recognizing this is a thing. The free comic book day comic helped that, and so more visibility is happening over there. And so you're going to see more people buying manga, not because they're super irritated with Western comics, that plays into it a little bit, but more because there's something to buy. There's a title that has got people's attention. They've got people talking. It's people are excited, if you will, about My Hero Academia and other books. And there's always a little bit of a halo effect. So whenever a title comes up that gets people going, Attack on Titan was one a few years ago. The whole romance, the manga genre. Further back from that, if you're super old, there was the Ranma one half phenomenon that got a lot of people kind of moving over. And what we see is we see people coming in and we see people wanting those titles. And 20 years ago, there was not a great vehicle. There was not great availability. There was demand, but there wasn't. It was hard to get, and we didn't have the various ways to pick up these books. And so then, about 10 years ago, a little bit longer, 15 years ago, there was we saw a better movement where suddenly the books are more available. We see Barnes and Noble kind of devote more space to it, and they're more available. So you're seeing more pickup. And whenever somebody goes to buy a certain manga, let's say My Hero Academia, the same thing happens that happens with Western comics or with regular comics. Of the titles of the manga isn't coming out with enough frequency to satisfy demand. It's in a graphic novel format, but if you don't live in Japan, you're not getting kind of weekly Jump or some of the other books. You're not getting these things weekly, so you want more content. You're like, I enjoyed this book, I'd like another book, but the book's not available, and in some cases may not be reprinted and brought over for 3 months. So what happens is you just your hand goes down the shelf. You start looking at other manga, and he's like, okay, well, this looks kind of like the one I was enjoying. Let me try this one out. And so you get this halo effect where if there's a popular manga out, if there's a popular title, it will get people to buy other popular titles, and or sorry, not other titles. They'll just start to branch out and find other things they like, and we're in that period now. And we had that period, I think, pretty strong about I'm going to say 10 years ago. We had a really big push of manga getting it interesting, and a lot more stores carrying it. And then we kind of had a decline. The people who go over and really love manga don't see the decline because they're just staying in that ecosystem. They're buying those books. But we saw a pullback. There weren't titles that really excited people. I said Attack on Titan. That had a bump, but nowhere near, I think, what we're going to see with My Hero Academia. That book is that whole title's got a lot of legs, and that's just going to do really well. There's a rumor that I believe is just a complete rumor that Disney and Universal and some of the big companies are hunting licensing that property so they can do some high end movies in kind of the Western audience based off that concept. I'm pretty sure that will happen. I'm not sure by those names, but I think somebody will do it. Universal's an interesting target because they have a better track record of taking some of these Eastern properties and bringing them over and not screwing it up in the process. Not always, but some of the time. Anyway, I've said a lot of things here in the last 5 minutes. The other half of that is like, well, people are doing this because they're sick of social justice politics and other things, and so they're going to manga. And I just being honest, I don't see that. And why? Here's why I don't see that. If you look at the titles sold, if you look at what people are buying and what people are not buying, there's not a correlation between people getting like so mad at Marvel, if you will, for doing some social justice politics in a comic, and like throwing the comic down and then moving over to manga. You don't see we're not I don't the numbers do not back that up. What is true about the numbers is that you see people who are not buying certain titles or abandoning certain titles, and you do not see them immediately flood over to manga. But what you do see is when there's a popular manga book, you see pickup there. But it's not one to one. It's not We can't trace a somebody is angry at the uncancelable wasp and they're buying My Hero Academia. You do not see that A to B connection. You see people getting frustrated with the title and not buying it. And in comics in particular, it's really what I would call a dead on arrival phenomenon. So the number one issues come out, and people kind of decide right then and there if they're in or out. It used to be that people would come in and they would buy like three or four issues, and then maybe they're like a collector and so they want the number ones, but then they just taper off, or maybe the title loses them. Now I think we're seeing a lot more, and it's really in the last 18 months. If the title's not going to go, it doesn't go from the start. The shops may still buy more number one issues, but the number one bumps are smaller unless the title is going to go. So Savage Avengers had a good debut, and it sold some good copies, and you're seeing interest in that book. You don't see people coming in buying the number one issue and then abandoning it because they hate it. It's more binary than that. When the Wasp, and it's got a different adjective. I apologize. I'm driving and I've forgotten. Unstoppable Wasp. I think it's Unstoppable Wasp is what it is. I should stop the Uncancelable Wasp. But you see that title come out, and you see it come out for another version, another round, and they're trying to make another trade that they can solicit off of Scholastic and other places, but it's not catching there either. And I know some people's like, "Oh, yes, it is." It's not though. If you dig in to kind of what's being ordered and what's not, and I do some volunteer work at an elementary school where this stuff's being pushed, and I know that's sample source of one, but those books are not catching. They're not. It's not working, and that's why I don't think we're getting a volume 3 of Unstoppable Wasp. But you don't see people on issue 1 buy it at all. You don't see people get it and then get angry and then stop buying it. You just see people just not buying it in the first place, and that's really why there's not a dissatisfaction with a particular title and that then causes a manga purchase. What you're seeing is that manga has a couple titles right now that are big and getting promoted and getting marketed well in the West, and that's bringing people into the shops. And so it's more a result of healthy, hey, here's a good book, here's a good alternative, you should check that out. No different than if, some smaller publisher, an IDW or a Valiant or a Dark Horse or something, if they put out a title, kind of like what we see for Vampirilla this run, if they put out a title with a creative team that people know and kind of recognize and is interesting, and it's got a hook that gets a lot of buzz, it will take off. It will be healthy. The challenge for Western comics is that it usually takes like a year to get that buzz really going. And if the title is not kind of well funded and is not doing the right things and not being marketed well, it doesn't survive long enough for the buzz to really roll. And this is a little bit what Marvel was thinking with Wasp and in particular, an Iceman, when it came back for another round, is it's like, hey, we didn't give this title enough room to breathe. We didn't give this title, enough chance to really get that buzz. And there are graphic novels being sold, and it does have a secondary market, life to it. But anyway, that's kind of, hopefully that answers the question. I hope it does. And if you have any more comments on it, leave a comment below. I'll be happy to answer more, and we'll investigate this topic further because it's an interesting one, kind of how manga plays into the greater comic story. But otherwise, like, subscribe, hit the bell for notification, follow me on Twitter on Comic Perch, and thanks for listening.